Welcome to Declutter for Change, the podcast where we clear the visible and invisible clutter from your mind, body, soul, and home to make room for the life you actually want to live and love. I'm your host, Heather Clark. I'm joined by spiritual life coach and energy intuitive Jeffrey Eisen to discuss how to quiet your busy mind, clear the emotional clutter causing physical illness, and stop forcing generic self-care habits that do not fit your soul. Jeffrey is a spiritual life coach, energy intuitive, and channeler of Sheltazar, who left the corporate world after a major spiritual awakening. He helps people worldwide overcome anxiety, emotional overwhelm, and modern stress by blending deep spiritual wisdom with practical, everyday guidance. Through private coaching, guided meditations, and his oracle cards, Jeffrey's main mission is to help individuals quiet the mind, trust their intuition, and strip away daily pressure so they can reconnect to who they truly are. Hello, Jeffrey. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. And what about you on this beautiful, sunny, just about summer day?
Right? Oh, summer. I cannot wait. So, listeners, we've both realized. So, Jeffrey and I are as the online space, in each other's backyard type thing. So, he's just in Toronto and I'm just about northwest of Toronto, about an hour or so. So, crazy funny things that, you know, when you meet people and then you're like, wait a sec, no, I'm there too. Yeah, no, I'm there too. Like, it's like, oh wait, I'm just north of you. That's awesome.
Which is so unusual because I'm used to connecting with people. I do a lot of lives on Insight Timer, and it's like, oh, I'm in New Zealand today. And it's
right?
Like, oh, okay.
Well, and that's
so
the thing.
It is very odd that we would be so close because we usually think online is far away, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing. So the other thing is too, is I've had somebody from Australia, I've had from the Europe, I've had from the States, I've had whatever. So it's one of those things I'm like, no, you're literally, in considering the online space, you're in my backyard. So this is really cool. So what I'd like to, the listeners to also hear as well, but also I'd like to know is, how did you get into coaching? How did you get into the spiritual side? Were you always somebody who was a spiritual person growing up or whatever? Or was this something like, you know, we usually hear like something major happened and then, you know, follows the spiritual side of things?
Yeah, right. Well, definitely not my whole life. I'm very fortunate. I consider myself having a do-over, and I was kind of a late starter because for the first 50 years of my life, I was pretty typical. As you mentioned before we started this, you like small towns. I was born in a small town. My father seemed to care most about his business, so I gravitated to showing an interest in the business. I figured, okay, that might be how he'll pay attention to me. And so it was very, very typical, not spiritual. Brought up, in a a religious background, not overly, more secularly. And it was after 50 years, I got married, had kids, ran the family business for over 30 years, was relatively financially successful. I began to question if there was more to life. And that was, as I look back on it, I know a nudging from my soul telling me that it was time for what I came here to do. And it was one of those gradual transitions. I'm going to be on another podcast in a little while and they normally do near-death experiences and that big that event in your life that has that major immediate impact. Yep. I was a bit slower. As the company grew, we hired human resources consultants. We were doing training, and I kind of got into leadership. And our HR consultant gave me some personal development books. And actually, the first book that I got into it with was The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, Robin Sharma, which is another Ontario person like you and I. And it was like, wow, that's really, really interesting. And I was fascinated by it and set my intention that I wanted him to be my first coach, and he was. And that was the beginning of this transition. I started to lose interest in the business and more interest in my journey of self-discovery. And it became very intense. I was reading a lot, got into spirituality, and then realized that what I am here for is to awaken, empower, and inspire others by sharing my love and wisdom. So eventually sold a family business, became a life coach at first, and then a life and spiritual coach. And now I'm like full on woo woo. I'm a spiritual life coach, channeler of Schultz's iron and energy intuitive. And this is obviously what I came here to do in this lifetime. And it just feels right for me.
And that's so cool. Like, just to see, like, you were saying, okay, it was a gradual thing. It was, eventually, whatever, you had questions, you did whatever. And then to hear other people's stories of where, like you said, it's a life altering moment and stuff like that. Whereas for me, it was, knock, knock, hello, knock, knock. So like, it was one of those things, because I grew up in a family that was very logical. Like, if you didn't see it, you didn't believe it. You got to see it to believe it. But I also, which is ironic, grew up religious too. So it was one of those things where it was like, okay, well, you can't be this if this is happening. You can't do that. But then as I came to my teens and all that stuff, and then as an adult, the adult part was the part where I was like, okay, something's more. Like, I had obviously divorce, I had this, I had whatever. But one year, it was back, I'm trying to remember where, actually, I can't even tell you when it started. That's what I can say. I can't tell you when it started. However, I know in 2017 and 18, I was getting dimes. And I'm not just talking like 1 or 2 dimes. I'm talking like, it was when I paid attention and was like, okay, this is more than just a coincidence. This is something. Mm-hmm. I collected 84.
Oh, wow.
And I was still, well, I don't know, kind of thing. So that was my introduction into spiritual. And of course, coming into the online space, you can't not find someone or, interact with somebody that hasn't had that, whether it's the spiritual side of themselves that, as adults, or from, they grew up with it. So I find it so fascinating that there's such a difference of how we got to more or less the exact same thing.
Right. That, there's that old saying, there are many roads to God, right? Or many paths to God. Mm-hmm. And I definitely feel the energy shifting in such a way that more and more people are interested. I think that religion has served its purpose, and it fed in to the logic that we were raised with, which is yep. Right. It all made sense. But as I began to investigate and get more involved in the unseen world, the more I realized that we're not ever supposed to know what it's all about. There's an ancient text called the Kabbalion, which is the teachings. One. All right, the teachings yes. of Hermes Trismegistus. And in the Kabbalion, they refer to that higher power as the all. And there's a line in there that, it's a short little book, I love yep. it. I love the principles. And it says the all is unknowable and unthinkable. And I would add incomprehensible. And if you think about that, we're never supposed to know what it is that, religion and even some spirituality wants to put into a box, wants to make logical, wants us to fully understand. Well, we can't understand. And, whether those dimes or those things you were finding, whether 84, maybe that was part of it, the numerology, who knows? They speak to us in a treasure hunt. They speak to us in riddles. And that's what I love. I remember a young fellow I was coaching once, and he looked at me and he said, I think it's so interesting that you are so passionate about something you will never figure out. And it's like, yes, you're right. I am extremely passionate, and I'm okay with not figuring it out, because the path to higher consciousness, the path to trying to figure it out is so much better than that old logical box we used to have to live in, right?
Oh, 100%. Like even just, as I'm doing these podcast episodes with guests, like 2026, we discussed this before we press record. I was saying like, I did solo episodes beforehand. Now 2026, I wanted to do guest podcasts because I know what I know. That's it. I don't know what others know. So I'm like, I need to bring guests on to talk about the things that they have spent years learning about because they're the expert in that. And I'm like, and I would just love for my audience to just hear somebody else's perspective, because as much as I have my own, there's totally different, because the way I grew up, the way that, you grew up, the way that, a listener grew up is totally different. But just being able to have like that information, that journey, and go, oh, that actually makes sense. Yeah, I want to learn more about that. And just like you said, like we couldn't even fathom what there is to actually know. And I forget what book it was or where I saw it, but it was the, a little circle, and it's like, the things you know. And then in a little bit bigger circle of, the things that you don't know. And then there's like huge circle of the things you don't even know that you don't
know. Right. Exactly. Exactly. And that's so interesting. That's fascinating, because when I began my journey of self-discovery, I was an avid reader. I was reading 50, 60 books a year, going to workshops, listening to audios, sampling healing modalities, a variety of healing modalities. I was just digesting it all, just reading fervently. And it's kind of interesting that in the last 16, 17 years, I have not read a book. And what I say is that life is my teacher. And as Gandhi said, my life is my teachings. And so I agree with you. I see that that's the soul nudging of your natural progression, to go and share what you know, to talk about your little circle, and then to expand it to that circle that you don't know, that other people may know and share with you. And I get a sense, you will be not too long before you are embarking in that infinite circle of everything that ever was, everything that is, and everything that will ever be. And that is so fascinating. It's so fascinating. So, and it's kind of interesting, I often share with my clients when I'm coaching, I'll say to them, I get as much out of this session as you do, hopefully. And then I add a little humor saying, but the bad news is you still have to pay me. But it's true. And so I congratulate you for having this podcast, because I'm sensing that is part of your spiritual journey. That is part of your evolution. And Shelters, the entity that I channel, has taught me that knowledge experienced is wisdom.
100%.
And so you can read it and you could get it in the brain. As Shelters has explained to me, there are layers of learning, and one of the lower layers of learning is intellectual learning. So when you're reading the book, you're feeding the mind, right? But if you really want it to become wisdom, then you need to experience it. And so this conversation is an experience for you and I, and hopefully for the listeners, because I'm pretty sure both you and I are going to come out of this wiser, and hopefully the listeners will as well, if they listen to what we are sharing and apply it.
Absolutely. And so one thing I do have to ask is, there's a listener, they usually come on, they see that it's declutter for change. Oh, okay, cool. I'm going to declutter, whatever. And now we're talking about some spiritualness and stuff like that. What is a way that you've seen that people are more receptive? So yes, we went the logical part. Like, let's say me 25 years ago, telling me, like, I'm very logical, like I've been brought up that you got to see it to believe it type thing. What is something that, if you've got people, or maybe a listener has the family members and stuff like that, they're like, ooh, what are you listening to? That sounds so weird. And it sounds so like, what the heck? What is something that they can tell their friends, their family, or even themselves of, to be a little more receptive to understanding that energy is literally all around us?
Well, I mean, the scientists have told us that, and I certainly believe that that the higher power uses science to create all that it created. So it's not that they are separate. It's just, you know, when I was thinking about decluttering and you know, because my bend is a little bit more spiritual, but I would say that one of the major things for me, one of the major turning points in my journey was the decluttering of my mind and my emotions. Was it decluttering of the emotions, or was it connecting to the emotions? Because as a man born in 1952, I mean, you think you were logical. I mean, everything in my life was all about that logic. You know, I truly believe that, you know, the person with the most thoughts wins the game. When I was in business, I would get up and hit the shower and my mind would be engaged, and it would be the whole day, to the point where I think at one point I had to go to a doctor that gave me a hypnosis tape so I could sleep at night, right?
Yes, I knew a few, especially males. I knew a few of those that, yeah, or as soon as you hit the pillow, you were out cold because you were so tired because your mind was going so much.
Correct. So I am a big fan in beginning to declutter the mind and the emotions. And maybe it's not as much decluttering the emotions as connecting to them, because I truly believe that a lot of our mind clutter is because we are not prepared to fully embrace our feeling consciousness. Okay. Like you know, although I'm this old guy, I am the poster person for feelings and emotions. Very unusual for a 74-year-old male, but it is true. When one of the first alternative healing modalities that I went to when I began my journey was this beautiful shaman. We were living in Ottawa at the time, and she scanned my body and said that my lower chakras, which is the you know, the gastrointestinal area, was a tarfield of unexpressed emotions. There is no coincidence that I had bleeding ulcers and Crohn's disease from a young age. And she began to do the healing, and I was crying like a baby in the fetal position. It was a phenomenal release. And I was naive enough to think, oh, okay, that's finished, right? Talk about logic, right?
Okay, cool, we're done.
Right?
Thanks.
Yeah, on to the next one. Of course, a few months later, I was on somebody else's table and somebody else's table, and slowly started to let go of those unexpressed emotions. It was that first coach that I mentioned before, Robin Sharma, that taught me when I began to coach with him. He's a firm believer in early awakening, to get up at 5 a.m. I think since then he's had a book called the 5 a.m. Club or something to that effect, right? And I would get up at 5 a.m. and he would teach me to meditate and read and listen to quiet music and journal. And the journaling was so cathartic, because in the beginning, it allowed me to connect with those unexpressed emotions. And I would just write and write, handwritten. I would write and write and write and write. And it was a decluttering. I'm a big fan that journaling can be a decluttering experience, a decluttering practice. And in the beginning, it was all of the, you know, I hate my mother, I hate my father, all of this, these people did, you know, letting go of some of that. And after a while, what I say is, as I cleaned the swamp a bit, as I got rid of that tarfield, I really enjoyed the journaling practice. So I continued. And what I found myself doing is probably expanding to that circle of what we don't know, right? And I would be asking questions. And sure enough, onto the page, there would be some answers. And I would read my journal entry to my wife after, and she said, "Who wrote that? You didn't write that. Where did that come from?" And that was the beginning of me connecting to the unseen world. And ever since, I mean, I have evolved in how I've connected to the unseen world, the invisible world. But that was the beginning. That was the beginning. That allowed me not only to declutter, because just think about it. If a room is so cluttered and you bring something into it, you've got no space for it, right?
Yep.
And it becomes so cluttered. I'm sure, if you open that cupboard, and I got a few of them here in my sanctuary that are hidden away, and you open it, it's like, oh, I know that's in there. I just don't know where. That's what happens to us when our mind is so cluttered and our feelings are so unexpressed and within us energetically. And of course, that Kabbalion we both talked about, one of the principles is that everything is vibration, right? The principle of vibration. And so that mental clutter is causing a lower vibration. The suppressed emotions is causing a lower vibration. And as a consequence, we are walking through life, slugging our way through all kinds of difficulty. And it is when we empty the mind, and one of the things that were on the written page from Shaltazar is quiet the mind and open the heart. And that's what I was doing in the journaling, but who knew that heart was so hardened? Who knew that things were so jammed up in me that energy was like a tar field? And as I started to go into that tar field, as I started to declutter my thoughts and my emotions, there was amazing clarity that came through. And
100%.
I love teaching people how to connect to the unseen world. I've got some courses on it because it's a life changer. It gives you access to that big circle you talked about of what we don't know, right?
100%, yeah.
Right? It's like, yeah.
And so for me, and that's one of my things. So I have a whole, all my pillars are mind, body, soul, and home. Because you cannot clear one without affecting the others. You cannot only clear one. You have to clear them all out. So when you were talking about the decluttering of the mind, and, journaling is one of the things. Some people call it a mind dump. Some people call it a brain purge. Whatever it is, it's literally taking the pen to paper and getting stuff out, whatever's on your brain, whatever's, etc. And then you can, one of my things is you can look at it and see what are things I can't change. Just cross them out. Because then you're like, why was I still thinking about that? I can't do anything about it. It's done. So it's like, oh, why am I thinking about it? And, pick one and go, okay, let's look more into this. What does this actually mean? Where's this serving my life? If it's not serving me, I got to learn to let it go. And then when you do, what comes through, like you were saying, like the whole spiritual stuff, the whole, being able to do things that you're like, wait a second. Oh, I feel this now. Like this feels good.
Right. And so it's interesting you say that because of course, I always use the example. We get very, very frustrated if we're on our device and we can't connect to the internet and the Wi-Fi is low and the signal is poor. Well, what do you think we are doing with this cluttered, mind, body, soul, right? And home. And if we don't open up that signal, we're not going to get that guidance. And why, what I say is kind of interesting. We're into this age now of artificial intelligence. And it's kind of neat. And, there are different people that have different opinions, right? Okay.
I'm a little iffy, I'm a little right. I like it, but only using it for certain things. I don't use it
Well, right. But you see, and that's the key. The key is to be able to use it.
Yes.
To use it for your own benefit and not be afraid that it's going to run us, right? Okay. We're doing this podcast. AI is not going to be doing this podcast. This is you and me. The listeners are listening. And so I think we have to be careful not to be afraid. And I just wrote a piece, an interesting piece. I'm working on something now called Living the Wisdom. I've channeled over 250 messages of Shaltazar, and now I'm going back and creating more applications of that divine wisdom. And the phrase came up, feed the muse, which is really feed our creative part, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And what I came to realize is that we are the muse and AI is the mule, right? And
Yep.
if we look at AI in terms of helping us do the work and not taking over, right? Then it's really not a problem. It's really not a problem. So I would highly encourage you to add another pillar, and that is the emotions, because the emotions are very different than the mind.
That
Okay?
goes into body. Actually, with my pillars, it's the mind, the body. So it includes literal the body, but also the emotional body.
Okay,
Yes.
interesting, because one of the things I've come to, for me anyway, and it's all how we look at it in terms of making sense to us, but I like to think of us as having more than one body, that we have a physical body, a mental body, an emotional body, an energetic body, and a spiritual body, and all of them increase in vibration. Of course, our spiritual body is invisible. Our physical body is very, very visible. It's that form,
Very
right?
tangible. Yep.
Right. Yeah. And the mental body is the mind. It sort of exists in the brain, and then the emotion, and there's that. And so I love to help people declutter the mind and the emotions, because I find they are the big blocks when things are coming down from that spiritual body, energetic body into the mental and emotional. When we get cluttered there, then what drops down into the physical body is the denseness, the heaviness, the intensity, and that is where we form dis-ease.
Yes.
And so if we can get the mental and emotional bodies moving more freely, then the physical body will definitely be more healthy and alive.
Yes.
After I was diagnosed with Crohn's in my mid-20s, and I'm now 74, about 2 years ago, I was totally devoid of the disease. I healed the disease. Although the medical profession would say it's in remission, but that's their limitation. It's gone, never to come back again, is what I believe. And my beliefs are very, very strong. So it is really, really important to look at all of the things that are jamming up those bodies, right? And if we are eating poor foods, it is most likely because we are suppressing some emotions, because we've got some mental stress and heaviness, and like there's that emotional eating. So all of those bodies, all of those pillars are connected. Our logical mind wants to sort of look at the individual pillars, but I guess they're all home, right? That's one of your pillars, right?
Yes.
It's all home.
Yeah.
Right?
So the mind is the mental stuff. The body is the the emotional stuff. Then the soul is the spiritual stuff. And then the home is the physical stuff. So tangible in your house.
Right.
Those things need to be clear, because the other thing is with the home part, if you have a messy house, if you have things spewed everywhere, don't care, closets covered with everything, that takes a toll on your subconscious mind, whether you're consciously looking at it or not. It has been scientifically proven. So if you want to be a scientific, logical person, it has been scientifically proven that the physical clutter actually does do damage to our brain and our thinking and how we actually move about, day to day, which also then affects our emotional side. And then, as you were saying, if we're not actually processing the emotions, they become ailments or disease in the body. So
it's all about that. It's all about decluttering. It's all about making it simple. And it's kind of interesting. I've been looking at human life lately as I'm getting older and in my final chapters, and looking at what's important and what's not. I personally find spirituality extremely simple. And yet I look at the human world, I look at something, I look at a movie, and then I realize how complicated it was to write the script, to polish the script, to get the actors to do the set. It's like, wow, I just want to retreat back into my little spiritual self where things seem to be very simple. And so that's one of the things that we have to be cognizant of in this complicated world, is there's clutter everywhere. I mean, if you start looking at what's underneath my phone working, what's underneath us talking, even though we're neighbors, we're an hour apart, right?
Yep.
We could be a world apart, and it's the same technology. There's something going on underneath that is very, very complicated, isn't it? It had to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Just think about just how to get the internet, how to get this, this podcast. We're talking to each other. We're on video right now. It's only audio podcast, but just that, being able to do that and having those connections. Because again, that's the energy though. The energy is going from one house to the other. It's going from tower to tower to all that stuff. So when people say it makes me laugh now, but I was that person too. That's why I can laugh about it. But just saying so if I can have a Wi-Fi signal go from my computer to the tower or through the cord or whatever, how can we not comprehend the fact that we can have that same signal from source or from creator or whatever? Yeah. Well, and my biggest thing for me is nature. I love nature. I'm a gardener. I love, I literally, now that it's nice and warm here in Canada, I'm out barefoot all the time, grounding myself. I've hugged trees. My kids have laughed at me, but I'm like, don't knock it till you try it.
I'm a nature photographer, so I hear you. Nature is one of the ways that we can declutter and that we can get our energy flowing and purifying ourselves. So I'm a big fan. There's nothing like looking at nature through the lens of a camera. It's just like, it is so, you just see that little square. That's it. Everything else is shut out. All of the clutter, all of the noise around you. You are just looking at that flower, at that stream, at that bird. It's like phenomenal. I love it. So nature obviously is another way of decluttering.
100%. Yep.
One of the things we have to be careful of is, because of the complexity of our world, because of all of the advancements we have made, that's more clutter. That's more clutter, right? Yep. I mean, you were telling me before we started recording how yesterday's podcast, the person had some Wi-Fi issues or whatever it was, right? Okay, and we count on that technology. We count on that happening, that convenience happening, but it gets jammed up too. And so when we lose our Wi-Fi signal, right? And there was some really glitchy stuff happening. And there's nothing like going back into your mind when you try to solve a glitch. It's like, oh, I'm going to solve that problem. What's going on here, right?
All I said to him was, I was like, listen, if this happens too many times, we'll just reschedule for another day, because maybe something, is happening, because it was on his end, whatever. I said, maybe something's happening. They're doing construction. I said, no big deal. It's okay. Whatever. But we managed to get it through. He only dropped off twice, so I only have to edit those little parts out, but that's okay. Yeah, but that's the thing. It's one of those things where it's like, you know what? A few years ago, I probably would have been so frustrated, so whatever. But now I'm like, you know what? It's fine. This stuff happens. And
one of the phrases that appeared early in my journaling as I was connecting to Sheltazar was release, let go, and surrender. Release, let go, and surrender. And that has been so powerful, because talk about adding clutter when you try to control what is beyond your control, right? I mean, Reinhold Niebuhr's God grant me the serenity to accept what I cannot change, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So powerful, right? The 12-step program. And yet we are trying to control what is beyond our control, and it is adding to the clutter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. We need a simpler life.
And so when someone is at a point that, okay, they know they've started their spiritual side of things, they understand a lot of it, but they're not sure how to go about it to actually clear out the mental and the emotional side of things. What is something that you can give for the audience, for the listeners, a good tip, like a starting point or whatever, or like even a channeled tip that you've received? What is something that they can start today that will help them further in their journey?
And that's interesting. I will give you a bit of a how, but one of the interesting phrases that I interpreted from Schultezar is that how diminishes our power. So even asking how is going to cause the listeners to get their pads and papers out and mark down the steps to how. And I think you want to let go of the energy of the step by step, the how, the trying to figure it out. Having said that, meditation is wonderful. A lot of people cannot benefit from it because they are trying too hard, right?
That would probably be somebody like me.
Okay. And so the idea is not to meditate. The idea is to quiet the mind. And so the corollary, of course, that Schultezar says is how diminishes our energy or our power. What we want to focus on is what. So the what is not meditation. The what is quieting the mind. The what is decluttering. The what is slowing down, right? And then you allow yourself from that place. So the first thing I like to do is set the intention. I mean, if you go into a meditation and you say, okay, I'm going to quiet my mind. I'm going to quiet my mind. Let me see what I'm going to do after I finish meditation. Okay, I can meditate for 5 minutes, but then I got to do, my to-do list. You know, I mean, to this day, when I meditate, and I don't time it exactly, but it still takes me 30 to 45 seconds, maybe a minute to quiet the mind.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, it would take far longer because a thought leads to a thought leads to a thought.
Mm-hmm.
So the key is, and I remember someone teaching me a long time ago, that to be aware of your thoughts, to focus on your breathing. And then the moment you feel a thought coming up, you release it. You release it like a cloud, right? And then, okay, and what that person had taught is count your breathing. So you're counting 1, 2, sometimes you get lucky, you'll get to 3 or 4, and then there's the thought, right?
Yep.
And so when you become aware of that, you let go of the thought. And if you remember where you left off, you continue counting and breathing, or you simply start over again. But the key is to become aware. That first coach of mine, Robin Sharma, taught me that awareness leads to choice, and choice leads to change. So becoming aware of the clutter and choosing whether you want to continue to have the clutter. And some people say, oh, that's not clutter. That's important, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. I've heard it all. There's plenty of things.
Go to the closet and say, thin it out. Well, I don't know. I might wear that. When's the last time you wore? I don't know. Maybe a couple of years ago, but I might wear it. I can't.
But I spent so much money on it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. All these excuses. So a great phrase, awareness leads to choice, and choice leads to change. So if you have a thought, you were talking about this before, is it within your control? You've got a thought, become aware of that thought, and then choose whether it's in your highest good or not.
Yep. For me, I know I could not do before because I was the type of person that was go, go, go. Like I'm talking like my schedule was to the minute. Like it was back to back because, did general manager. I was a manager my entire life of any job I've had, whatever. And so coming from that and then coming into the online space and having my own business and stuff like that, I was like, okay, I'm going to try these things that people talk about, this visualization, this meditation stuff, because I was like, I've never done it before. Cool. But I had to sit down and be quiet. And I was like, oh, that's not easy for me. So what I found for me, one of my favorite things, and I still actually do it now, is I'll either light a candle and just stare at the flame, or I actually have a bonfire. Like my biggest thing is I'll write things down, or if I have journals and whatever, and I'm done with them, or I've already looked over them and being like, okay, cool. I go and burn. I don't know why, but I love a good burn. But that's what helped me, because each time I had that thought, I would just go, okay, here. And I would pretend that I'm burning the thought. Okay, we're done. We're done with that one. Yep, we're done with that one. So for me, that was the easier part than just closing my eyes, because I think it's called aphantasia or something like that, where I can't actually visualize yet. And now some people say, oh, that's because you got it blocked, whatever. I was like, whatever. As of right now, I can't close my eyes and see a red apple. I see gray or black. So when people are saying, oh, visualize, your future or visualize this, I was like, I can't do that. But I could put me into the situation of how would it make me feel?
Right.
So that was the part where I was like, okay, so for the listeners, if you can't sit down like I before, now I can sit down more often than not, especially if I'm outside in nature and stuff like that. But it's one of those things, but you have to slow down. I think that's the problem.
And you're raising a really, really interesting point, and that is it's not one size fits all. So anybody that is out there and reading all of this stuff and saying, oh, I have to do meditation. If it doesn't work, try something else. My meditations in the beginning were guided meditations because I could not have that total silence. To this day, I meditate with sound healing music. Mm-hmm. I do crystals. Like, find your own comfort. Do not think that there is one size fits all with this, and keep trying. Keep trying. Like we talk about nature. Like, if nature gets you into present moment awareness, and realize, of course, we are fighting an uphill battle because with everything that is going on, it is very, very difficult to be mindful. It is very difficult to be present. The mind will either go to the past or the future. It's very uncomfortable in the present. And all of the social media, I mean, just think about it, right? I've watched myself. It's like you scroll and say, why am I scrolling? And you keep scrolling. Right? I mean, that's what they want us to do.
Become a habit or whatever.
Right. A habit. Right. And so the key for the listeners is don't be sitting there with your pencil and paper and saying, well, this is what Heather said and this is what Jeffrey said. Try it. Just keep trying it and find what works. And you said something which is key. It's how you feel. If it makes you feel slightly more relaxed, slightly more decluttered, slightly more at ease, then do more of it. Yep. And if it doesn't, then don't keep doing it because the book told you were supposed to do it.
Yes, right? Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, what did Einstein say? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. It's like, oh, I've been meditating. I've been trying this for months and months, and my mind is still going. Well, give it up. Try something else.
So my big thing that I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do these. I'm like, no, because they said is cold plunging. Is cold showers. I was like, I did them. And I remember like the whole, and then all of a sudden I'm like, why am I doing this? Every time I'm about to go in the shower and it's going to be cold. I know it's cold. I've already psyched myself up going, ugh, you don't like cold showers. No, mind you, I don't like hot showers either. I can't do a hot tub, but I also don't want to jump into the lake again when it's freezing cold. I fell through the lake when I was younger. So that was another thing, but why was I literally remember it was at the old place before we were here. I was like, why am I doing this to myself? Where I'm literally feeling the anxiety of it. I'm like, this can't actually be good for me when I have such a reaction to it. I was like, just stop it. And then I did. And I've never done a cold plunge.
Well, and that's interesting because we have to stop listening. I mean, here they are. We're asking the listeners to listen to us, but what I believe we're trying to do is empower them to find something that works for them. Stop doing the things people tell you are supposed to do. And that's why I am a big fan of, as Schultzer said, quiet the mind and open the heart. Allow your feelings. If it doesn't feel right to do a cold plunge, don't. If it doesn't feel right to sit there and agonize trying to meditate, don't. With regard to journaling, I'm a big fan of core journaling and just handwriting, but some people don't like it. I said, okay, take out your phone recorder and just verbal journal if that's what it takes. So you've got to come up with stuff that works for you. And that's where Schultzer says, focus on the what, not the how. The object is declutter. The object is slow down. The object is raise your vibration. Okay, those are the objects. That's the what that we want. Now, have some fun with it, make it like a treasure hunt, and find what works for you, because both you and I know that our life is so much better when we have decluttered, when we have raised our vibration, when we are feeling more and thinking less.
Yes. Yes.
And let the universe help you. Quit listening to rehashed stuff. I was talking before about AI. We sort of, we got sidetracked a little bit because it's like, oh no, she doesn't like AI. Okay. But what I was saying is that there is this infatuation with artificial intelligence, and yet what we have available to us is universal intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
That's that circle of everything that ever was, everything that is, and everything that will be, because in the higher realms, there is no time, there is no space. So why wouldn't we connect to our intuition? Why wouldn't we connect to the invisible world? Okay, because artificial intelligence is just a collection of all that we know in those,
and we put in
couple of circles, right?
People had to train the artificial intelligence to give us back what we naturally already knew anyways. Like,
right.
We just
so it's all within those first two circles you talked about, what we know and what others know that we don't know. But it's that infinite circle that we want to tap into, which is what nobody knows, right? And it's beyond us. And so to me, I would much prefer to tap into my intuition.
Yes. Yep.
And that guidance from the higher realm than be stuck in the limitations of either my mind or the collective minds of humanity.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I was saying, like, about AI. I do like AI. It's great. It helps with a lot of things. But for me, a lot of people are using it as if it's, instead of having to think about it, instead of having to feel about it, it's like, oh, I'm just going to go ask my AI.
It's a tool.
That's the part.
It is a tool. It is.
And that's it.
It is right. Yes, I'm sure the farm workers were very upset when the tractor came along, but they were able to retrain themselves and do something else. And I was around in the early 2000s when the internet came, and we were all afraid of it. It is important to embrace the evolution of humanity and find your place in it, right? So find whatever you can that helps you declutter that cluttered pillars that we have, all those bodies that we have. And although social media, although technology is very wonderful, it again depends on how we choose to use it. And if it is causing mental anguish, if it is causing addiction, if it is causing mindless scrolling, then that is just cluttering some other part of you.
Correct. So that is a fantastic area to actually ask you what I call the 4-pillar finish. So a tip or guidance or something that the listeners can take away when it comes to their mind, so the mental side of things, the body, the emotional, the soul, spiritual, or the home, or the physical. Is there a tip, a trick? I'm not even going to say trick, actually. There's no tricks, but a tip or just some sort of wisdom that you can give the listeners on each one of those pillars.
Well, I'm going to go back to the one, we gave them lots of tips. By the way.
We did, actually. It's like we did, actually.
Yes, right. Okay. Listen to this podcast again and again. And
there you go. Perfect. Done.
Right. I'm going to stick with the one I said before, which is awareness leads to choice and choice leads to change. So whether you are looking to declutter your home, whether you're looking to declutter your body in terms of the food that you put in, which is interesting because as you say that, you're sipping orange juice. So that's great. It's wonderful. Okay. Yeah, I love it. Is heighten your awareness. And in order to heighten your awareness, you must become more observant. Okay. And that's one of the things we probably have in common about nature. Like when you're looking at nature, you really have to look at the insect or the bird or the leaf or the flower. You are just so focused on that. There's that awareness. And it is often said that awareness is a large component of consciousness. And so the more aware how many times are you walking by something in your home and you don't even notice it? My wife is a beautiful artist. She's a great artist. And when she'll put up a new piece, I will stop and stare at it, on a regular basis. And after months or years, I don't even notice it on the wall.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? So that awareness, that mental awareness, that emotional awareness, just become more aware. What gets you excited? What doesn't get you excited? What gets you frustrated? Just focus on that awareness. The problem with that is that our minds are so busy and life is so busy that we are not fully aware. And so it is important to take time and just reflect. My two favorite times in the day are when I wake up in the morning and when I go to bed at night, because when we move from sleep consciousness to wake consciousness, and as we prepare from wake consciousness to sleep consciousness, it's a great opportunity to sort of just check in. So, and awareness can be after the fact. It doesn't have to be in the moment. So take some time and reflect. What worked? What made me feel this way today? When did I feel overwhelmed? How, when that person said something to me, that really began my journey. And I was very fortunate back in business. I was the guy that would walk around the plant and see things that other people didn't see. But I simply fed that awareness. And as I mentioned, the more aware you are, the more conscious you are of it, the more you can then say, choose differently. And so if I choose to have that one cupboard and it's all my technology stuff, it's often some of those great things I bought that never worked and I didn't want to throw them out. If I am choosing to leave that a cluttered monument to my experimenting and making things better, then that's my choice. And then I've relieved the guilt and the shame and all of that. So if you can become aware and consciously choose, you will see that your life changes. Right? And I think that's the tip that I would give for all of those pillars, whether it's your mind, your body, your soul. Just slow it down, become aware, and consciously choose. And you're going to find that your soul is going to kind of help you with those choices as you've slowed things down.
Yes, I can definitely say that the more I've slowed down over the years, now, mind you, obviously I still have a go every once in a while. Like tomorrow, we've got my daughter's, track and field tournament that she'll be at and stuff. But during that time and before and after, and knowing that I'll have a busy day tomorrow and stuff, and knowing I had a busy day today with 5 recordings and stuff, but the slowing down, I'm like, okay, cool. I can do this. Like, this is the joy in life, is just to be able to slow down. And it took me a long time to get to this point.
Right. But you raise a good point. There's nothing wrong with speeding up. Yesterday was kind of hot. I helped my daughter. We bought some new patio furniture at Canadian Tire. I volunteered to put it together. My goodness, to try and get it into my vehicle and get it unloaded and putting together hundreds of nuts and bolts.
Yes.
And I was totally exhausted. But bringing back to mind that awareness, I noticed this morning I was still in that go. And I really had to focus. It's like, okay, I had a day of get it done, Jeffrey, right? It's like, get her done, Jeffrey, right?
Yep.
We all have that part of us. And it was like, okay, all right, don't let that habit. You're gonna have to break that a little bit, because if I give into it today, then I'm not going to be able to. Then I'll give into it tomorrow, and then all of a sudden the whole week has been that uncomfortable go. So that's a perfect example of what we were talking about, that awareness. These 2 days are go, and I know that you are going to make a concentrated effort to shift that as the week goes on, right? To get out of the go, right?
Yep.
You're not going to avoid the go. And we're not telling people.
And that's it. Like, I've got an online business. Like, that's part of the joy, but I'm not going to the point where I know a lot of listeners have gotten to this point where they are constantly go with life, with family, with the business, with whatever, that you're going to get to a point where you burn yourself out. And that burnout is absolutely a low vibration. Let me just tell you, listeners, that is probably one of the lowest vibrations that you could get, is that burnout, that I don't want to do anything. I don't like this. I don't like you get to a point where you're like, I don't want to do anything. Right. That is not a place we want you to get. So learn.
So slow down before, right? Declutter. Right. Excellent. Good. Perfect. Oh, well done, Heather. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Jeffrey, for coming on. I know we could probably talk for much longer, but I do try and keep them around a 45 to an hour minute podcast. So, and we've given the listeners quite a bit to digest today. So thank you so much for joining me, Jeffrey. And I will put all of Jeffrey's links to socials or anything like that in the show notes, listeners, so you can go there and check him out.
Excellent. Thanks, Heather.